You're here for Season 7 of the Whole Horse Podcast, now at 110 episodes and counting. I'm your host, Alexa Linton, coming to you from Vancouver Island in Canada. I can't wait to continue to share thought-provoking, edge-pushing, geeky, and often challenging conversations with horse professionals from all areas of our industry who are working to make horses' lives better. This season, you can look forward to deep dives into equine bodywork and cranial work with my friend and colleague, Elise Miki, and much more on the specifics of creating enriching, healthy horse spaces, an area I'm particularly passionate about. I'm so excited that you're here listening in, meeting great horsey humans, and hopefully learning a new thing or two about horses and yourself. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. You're here for the Whole Horse Podcast, as you know, and I am here with one of my good friends and favorite guests. Lockie Phillips is back on the podcast today. Welcome, Lockie.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you for having me back again.
Oh, it's
this is number 4.
This is number 4.
Not that we're counting.
Amazing. I was not counting, so that's nice to know. And we're both, well, I'm like snuggled up on my couch here to give you a little sense of the ambiance. And Lockie, in his time, it is 10 o'clock at night, which
yes,
I am in bed by then. But Lockie apparently,
I'm a night owl.
He's a night owl, so he's
always have been
ready to roll here.
Yes,
which is great.
Yes,
amazing. So lots has shifted and changed since we last chatted, and our last podcast got slightly hijacked by a really, really important conversation about burnout, and we were going to chat a little bit more about the clinic tour. And we did chat a little bit about the clinic tour, but I've been wanting very much to talk to you about the thing that I am living vicariously through, which is your new farm and having your horses at home with you. So just wanted to get a sense. How's it going? How's it feeling?
I mean, when we had our first podcast interview, I might have inferred it at the time briefly, but the kind of life I was living then couldn't be more diametrically opposed to the life I'm living now. I still had the horses I had 2 less horses than I have now, but I still was keeping horses. I was still delivering the same services, really, but I was living off grid in a dry, arid part of Spain in the middle of nowhere, very far from services, very far from conveniences, in a very small converted stable, 60 square meters, with no personal space, no office, no nothing. And I was delivering emotional horsemanship in my business off like a picnic table in the corner of our bedroom, often with cats jumping over me and my partner trying to tiptoe around. And it was really, really tough. Me and my partner, we just squirreled ourselves away for a couple of years and just worked our tushies off to build some sort of platform that we could spring off. And I bought this farm about a year ago, and this is one of the last pockets in Western Europe where someone like me can find a house and land, or I'm just going to say the numbers, well under 200,000 euros, which is unheard of. I could not have this kind of lifestyle in North America. I could not have this kind of lifestyle in Australia. I couldn't even have this kind of lifestyle 3 hours drive to the west of me. I couldn't have it 4 hours drive to the south of me. I couldn't have it in France. So it's a depopulated region. The farm was tax-free because they were rewarding young people for moving in, and I paid no taxes on the property, which helped me sort of get everything jump-started. I also work like a crazy person and had saved up a lot of money to move in here. And I'm walking my talk every single day after many, many years of complete instability and chaos and logistical mountains just to get hay for the horses. I was living in Spain and buying hay from Latvia.
Yeah.
And it was cheap, and it was just nuts, just nutball life. And moving into this farm, all of that weight on my shoulders just went off.
Yeah.
And it's really been it's been like walking into heaven. And I say that with so much like humility and gratitude for the position I'm in. And I know how hard we worked and the amount of research I had to do to find this part of the world, and 15 years running all over Europe trying to find home. And so here I am with a very nice house and a small bit of land that had nothing on it, not a liquor fence post, not a shelter, not a barn. It had like a converted carriage house, which was used as a garden shed, which is now my stable. And that was all. Nothing. A few shade trees, but nothing. The house was great. There was nothing here for the horses. So I'm faced with the prospect of taking a virgin piece of land, which is about 1.2 hectares or 12,500 square meters, or that's just under, I think it's just under 4 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just under 4 acres. It's a small piece of land. Now, everyone in the village, I'm known as the crazy Australian in Loentia. That's my village. Or just by my neighbors, they say the Australian. Australiano in Loentia, they say. And someone at the hardware store, as we were moving in, said, "Oh, that's that crazy Australian who bought that farm and thinks he's going to have horses on it." Because in their mind, if you've got horses, you have a little cubicle box stable where they're locked in at night like a cow.
Yeah.
And then a great big green field, usually without fences. And the horses usually here are tethered to a chain, to a stake in the ground.
Wow.
And sometimes when they're tethered, sometimes they're given a bucket of water there for the day. And sometimes they're brought in the evening. But I've seen horses in Spain who are tethered for multiple days, and someone will bring them a bucket of water once or twice a day. And that's how they keep horses.
Wow.
Or they'll have like loads and loads of land, and there'll be ancient kind of rock fences with moss growing all over them because we're in a wet part of the country, or barbed wire or whatever. And they just sort of turn the horses out. Very traditional. Big green space, little box stable, out during the day if they're lucky, in at night. That's how people horse keep. And here I am in a depopulated region of rural traditional Spain. And I show up with my dog and pony show. It's like Looney Tunes showing up in a tiny little village. It's something out of a movie, really.
Yeah.
And I start building a paddock paradise. And I start roping in my neighbors. And we're 3 kilometers from the village, which is quite a good sized village, and a B road. So all the farms around us have to drive past our farm to go to the village for all services. So everyone goes past the farm, and everyone's been watching what we're doing here. And when I purchased the farm, the seller in the notary office, I was explaining to her my plans and how I was going to keep things, and she's nodding her head, and she just has this wry smile on her face, and she says, "You're going to be a celebrity in the village. People are going to be very nosy." And we've had people come and, quote, walk their dogs past the farm just so they can see what's happening. And like today, our post lady, where she loves delivering posts to us because she comes in, she has a nose at what we're doing, and she says, "Why are the horses blindfolded?" "Oh, they're fly masks." "Oh, wow. What are those like UFOs that you've got hanging in your pasture?" "They're fly traps." "Oh, I see. You don't have a stable?" "No, we don't have a stable." You don't have more land?" "No, we don't have more land. This is it." They're like, "Oh, fascinating." It's not malicious. They just genuinely are curious about what we're doing here. And we started with bare bones, a single track around the exterior of the farm, and 2 prefabricated, ostensibly mobile field shelters on skis, but they weigh a ton. No one's moving that thing. They sat like stones in 2 hurricanes in October, and they're not going anywhere. They're mobile field shelters, meaning if you are trying to get around planning permission, this is the shelter for you. So we started with 2 of those, and that was it, and some electric fencing. And we've just been adding layers to it and layers to it. And everything was going really, really great until the dry season finished and the rainy season started.
Yeah.
Like America has the Pacific Northwest. North America has the Pacific Northwest. We've got the Atlantic Northwest. So every high pressure system that builds over the Atlantic, as it comes across the Atlantic towards Europe, one of the first parts of Europe that's jutting out into the Atlantic is our little corner of Spain. So we're some of the first landfall for major storms across all of Europe, us an island. And in fact, our entire region is dotted by ancient Celtic ruins and archaeological sites, because there's a long connection between our region of Spain and the Celts. Because if you go 1 hour north to the seaside and take a boat straight line north, you don't touch France, you don't touch England, you touch Ireland. We're directly south of Ireland. So it's like Ireland, but way warmer and with much nicer summers. And I was in the middle of a group coaching program, and I was on the farm by myself because my partner was in Poland visiting family. And we've got like a major storm system coming in. Okay, cool, we'll be fine. And in the middle of the storm, I look outside my window and it's like the rain is going up, like up. And I was like, okay. And it was a hurricane. It was a proper like Atlantic hurricane.
Yeah.
We had 2 of those back to back, and I was not prepared.
Yeah.
We had to house the horses for 3 weeks on the concrete slab around our house, which is where you park your cars. They were living like, I'm doing my dishes at the kitchen sink, and there's a hay net tied to my kitchen window, and there are my horses. They're right there, which is kind of like a fantasy we all dream of, right? And it was kind of cute. They like lived on the slab for 2 weeks. So I've been running after winterizing my farm ever since, and it's been expensive, but this is a one-time expense.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely living vicariously through the amount of mud grids that you have put down.
Well, okay, so the mud grids are like the most expensive way to like get rid of mud, right? But this is how I've managed to do it. I'll be completely transparent. First thing I did was I found a mud grid company, and they're German, and I love working with the Germans because what you see is what you get. They're straightforward. They're not going to muck you around. They're great. And so I ordered their minimum order because I didn't need a tractor to unload it off their truck. They could deliver it straight from the truck, which was 1 pallet, just to test them. I put that 1 pallet in, and it took boot sucking, shin deep mud into firm hard standing, and I went, more. That's what I went.
More.
I went more. This is the way forwards for me. Yeah, like, and during the hurricanes, the grids became a pontoon. They floated in the water, and as the horses would step on them, the water would come up through them until they hit mud and it got firm. And then when the horses stepped off them, they floated again. They just became. It was wild. It was wild. And so impressed by them. So I wrote to the company. I said, look, I've got this little business. There are a bunch of people who trust me, and I don't promote things that I don't use myself. Can we collaborate? They sent me a contract. I've got an affiliative marketing arrangement with them. So people from my recommendation get a discount, and I get the proceeds of that discount, which then I put towards more mud grids. Also, there's an arrangement in Europe that if you're a registered business in Europe and you're purchasing things for your business as a business expense, you get a 21% discount. So it's like you don't pay value-added tax or VAT. Only if you're purchasing from a country outside of the country you're registered in. So if I was purchasing these grids from a Spanish company, they'd be 21% more expensive than if I purchased them from Germany. So that's the European Union encouraging. It's called an intra-community sale. It's encouraging the business community of Europe to hold hands and link arms. So already I'm at 25 to 30% cheaper than someone walking. What I would have paid. And then do I have further discounts from there? Yes, they're employing me to do a YouTube video about them. So that'll kick back to me at some point. And I also negotiated just cheeky an extra 10%. I'm like, can you just throw in an extra 10%? They said, yes. So I'm getting 40% off on these grids.
I put in 54 only this year. but still a chunk.
It's life-changing.
It has changed my girls' feet.
Existence.
Because they were, so they have one bigger shelter that they can both fit in, and they eat in front of it. And it was like you could pour gravel. It was like pouring gravel down a bottomless pit, putting it in front of that stall, because they spend so much time there eating. And this year put down the mud grids. I did the whole gravel thing. So I like filled them all up, which has been great as well, because it's good for their feet, keeps them pretty stable. And it's been like totally game changer. Not only that for Diva, for both of them, because I'm working on like hind end stability and back stuff, and I've been doing like all of those things, they have to step up about like 2 inches or so from the regular ground. And so often they'll have like their front feet on, they're eating with their back
stretch.
Yeah, they're getting this really nice stretch. I'm like, so yeah, their feet have been, because last year their feet fell apart, and I was like, okay, never again. So I also big fan of the mud grids. I think I have the same ones as you, pretty sure.
I think it's the same design that's just been rolled out across the world, and they're completely recycled.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I had
a 20-year guarantee or something.
20-year guarantee. It's crazy. And I had a 30-ton gravel truck, fully loaded, wet gravel truck.
Yep.
Drive straight over them.
Yep.
And they made it like a bit of a groaning sound, but they held up.
Totally. ...
until the gravel truck got bogged in my pasture down to the axle. And we needed 2 tractors to get the truck. It was leaning hard to the side. We needed 2 tractors to get it out. It was like the middle of the night. It was raining sideways. And my neighbor one guy comes with a tractor, and they say, nah, that tractor's not big enough. They call someone else who shows up with a cigarette in the corner of his mouth, and a huge tractor and pulled that thing out of there. So,
man. But they did pretty good until then.
If someone's starting out with mud grids, buy what you can afford.
Yeah.
And like what you did, Alexa, put them in high traffic or wet zones. So the first thing I did was put them right in front of my water trough. That's the first thing I did. Second thing I did was put them at entrances and exits to the fields, right? Yep. So that the horses had some firm standing, and they could at least like ease themselves into the mud, rather than going from like hard standing to like a bog, right? Which was really hard and dangerous, frankly.
Totally. Yeah.
And then we just sort of grew from there. And now I've got a 600 square meters of grids on the farm. I've got 1/3 of my track gridded, and it's 4 meters wide, the grid road. I built the gray grid road.
You have built it. I am so curious, because this is a question I get a lot of times from like kind of, horse people that are like, are they slippery? And They can be. They can be. I put gravel on top of my, and there's some gravel on top still. But when I saw yours on the track, I was like, I'm wondering how your horses have done with it, with the rain.
Such a good question. So in my experience, what I've seen so far, I had a couple of pearl clutching moments when they started running on them. And I was like, oh my God. Around corners, like trotting on them. If you have horses who are not fully inhabiting their bodies, and if you know, you know. If you don't know what that means, there's a good chance your horse isn't fully inhabiting their body. If your horse is fully inhabiting their body, they're not going to be spastic and throw themselves on an unknown footing. They're going to look at it, assess it, and be cautious and augment their movement accordingly. So that's really, really important that you have horses who are accustomed to living in at least semi-freedom and are able to make their own choices and haven't been micromanaged into oblivion where they kind of stand passive waiting for things to be perfect before they proceed. So all my horses look at the grids and go, oh, let me be careful on that. So they're all careful on it. Very, very quickly, through good old conditioning, the horses learned to prefer the grids for especially standing and slow moving. And anywhere where they have to potentially move a little faster, I've left like parts of mud where they can choose the mud instead. So I've put that in place. I've been told they can be slippery in hot weather because they heat up and they can expand and can get slick in
Right.
hot weather. But I do intend on covering all of them in gravel and or sand. And the good news about them is you don't need so much gravel as if you didn't have the grids. And financially, it is cheaper for me to put grids and a thin layer of gravel than to start with gravel. Now, I've got a couple of big gravel patches now, and I'm going to put in more because I can't cover my entire farm in grids. I would like to, but I can't just grid my entire pasture. I would like to, but I can't. There's not enough grids in the world for that. So I'm putting in some hard standing with gravel. And what I did first was buy a non-woven geotextile, like an anti-weed geotextile that goes down underneath. It's a friggin' mess to install, especially when it's raining, because there's like fabric on mud and the trucks, and it's like, and your neighbors are looking at you going, what the hell are you doing? But once it's in, and the gravel compacts, it's incredible. And it improves the drainage and you don't lose your gravel anymore. So sometimes you can lose the gravel through the grids as well. I'm finding that now, especially if you've got machinery going over the grids. So what I'm planning to do for some places is do grids, then geotextile on top of the grids, and then gravel over the top of that and doing that kind of sandwich. It's a better alternative for me compared to, for example, what Beth Ann did at Goresworth Track Livery in the UK, where she had excavators come in, take off all her topsoil, then huge amounts of like rubble down, then smaller rocks, then geotextile, then
the gravel,
crushed lime over the top. And that's like, 60, 70, 80 centimeters of materials that I don't have the money or necessarily the logistical patience to do that. The grids are thinner. I don't need to touch my topsoil, which I think is better for the ecology of our land anyway.
Yeah.
I don't disturb the seed beds, and it's faster.
Yeah. There's the Aries in you right there.
That's the Aries. That's the
get her done. We need to get her done. I can feel that. It's so interesting because I know, oh my gosh, I'm on all these track system sites right now and I'm watching these poor people in the UK and Ireland. Oh my gosh, the pictures of the mud is like, wow. So diabolical. I'm sending good vibes to all of those people, because it seems like a few of them are like, oh my god.
Well, we're gonna have a bumper hay crop this year after all of this water.
Let me tell you, out here we're in drought still, and I think I would prefer that. Getting lots of moisture and rain, definitely, because it's
drink it up.
Yeah. So I wanted to chat because I've been loving your post. I know I always love your post, but
thank you.
Lately there's been a few that have really struck a chord for me because, as you know, I've been sort of my latest rabbit hole seems to be the environment, space, track system, that sort of, I'm on a bit of a mission to start to shift things up out here. And I've just been really seeing this consistent thing, because I've been asking myself this question: why do people keep their horses the way they do out here? Like, why is it so rampant that the stall, the tiny paddock, the separation, the electric fence, the sterile ground? Like, this is just, I see it over and over and over again. And the thing that's come to mind again and again and again is, this is human centered. This is convenient, or so we think, for humans. But you did a post recently about like horse centered, what would that look like? And I'm really excited to jump into this conversation with you, not only around the land question, but also around, keep, working with horses, training horses. So like for you, the way that you're setting up your farm seems to me from a distance, I haven't been there yet, I want to go
yet.
But seems to be very like horse centered. Like you're sort of, what I'm seeing is that you're really listening to, okay, what are they needing? And then going forth from that space. Yeah.
Yes. We can't bypass the horse in horsemanship. we can't bypass the horse and horse keeping. Otherwise, it's just keeping and manship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the logical answer to it. And instead of trying to sit here and say that what I'm doing is exceptional or groundbreaking, it's certainly not. I think what I'm doing is just plain good old fashioned, out of fashion common sense to address the animal directly without passing it through any human culture except human cultures that I have discerned and critically discern are really, really focused on understanding the animal. And I mean, that infiltrates every aspect of my life and my work and the way I train. I was shocked and appalled when I crawled out from under my rock and started doing clinics to discover that it's unusual for horse trainers, even high profile horse trainers, to actually talk about how they horse keep. Now, a lot of them don't do their own horse keeping. They outsource that entirely. Or if they're running their own facility, they have managers in charge of it. But obviously they are the visionaries. They've set these things and they're at least co-signing how their horses are living. I also understand that different horses have different requirements, but all horses are still horses. And if no one else, Carl Hester and Charlotte Dujardin, don't write me if you don't like their training. I'm not interested in hearing your opinions if you don't like competitive dressage. All I'm saying is if you look at those two people, they have top level sport horses, or at least sport horses who are marked highly by the FEI, if I'm to be specific. As soon as they get home after an international competition, are turned out. Vallegro, multiple Olympic gold medalist, dressage champion, started his trainings with a 20-minute hack down the road. Chef's kiss to that approach, you know? So the argument that, well, top level sports performance horses need their stalls, etc. Yes, but also no. Like, really run that past your horse first. Some horses love their stalls and need them for their rest demands. Some horses, like people, do better with more sleep. Some horses need less sleep. Myself, I feel my best when I'm getting 8.5 to 9 hours sleep a day. That's when I really feel okay. If I'm running on 8 and only 8, I'm good. If I'm running on 7, I'm like bad milk sitting on the shelf. Like, I'm going to curdle in about 3 or 4 days. So some horses, but there are people out there who live on 5 or 6 hours sleep, and apparently they do just fine. Some horses are the same. I know my horse, Sani, because of his irritable bowel disease, has huge sleep demands. So even though he lives outside, having clean, dry, secure, deep, soft bedding is really important. And they really use it, you know? So different horses have different demands, but human-centric horse keeping is just an auxiliary arm of this same issue you and I and our friends and our colleagues return to again and again and again. And thank God we return it to that place, which is everyone stop, think about what we're doing here with horses. We need to really think about this. This is we're turning a corner, or we're not, with horses. And if we look at the historical precedents for this, about 100 years ago, Henry Ford invented the internal combustion engine. And this entire equine infrastructure, which infiltrated right into the heart of every major city across the globe, the carriage horses, the feed suppliers, the stable boys, the grooms, the people who fixed the carriages, who put the blacksmiths, the farriers. I mean, once upon a time, not so long ago, half a century ago, you used to be able to ride from one side of Spain to the other uninterrupted, because every single tiny shithole village had an inn, and that inn had a stable, and that stable had a feed supplier, and that feed supplier knew a farrier. So if you needed to feed, house, and shoe your horse as you were moving across the country, you could do that at any little black speck on the map. But about 100 years ago, all major cities experienced a 20-year complete collapse of that entire industry that was supporting those horses.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last part of the 20th century and the first part of the 21st, we seem to be in this weird kind of limbo twilight zone with horses. There was this kind of like kick back into sport from the 50s. Everyone was like, oh, well, they don't do that anymore, but oh, they're sporting equipment. Great. Oh, and it's linked to the aristocracy. It's linked to prestige. Oh, that's very, very of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Everyone wants to be upwardly mobile, new money, etc. Everyone's going in that direction. And we're still kind of clinging on to that. But that vision is kind of, you and I can agree, it's running on fumes now. Don't you agree with me on that?
Yeah,
that vision's kind of
it's shifted, and I think a lot of people are in this place of like, so what do we do now? Like,
what do we do now?
Like, what do we do
What
now?
do we do now?
We've got horses. A lot more people are in this place of, looking at relationship and what that is. I mean, I was seeing the post that you had shared from
Keystone Equine from Lee.
Yeah, from Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a read of that, and I was like, yeah, I also, that resonates, that hits, because I'm even in that place with my own horsemanship right now of, okay, what does it look like to have relationship and
technical skills? Yeah.
Like, what is that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like to put it, to be horse centered and to actually value their opinion, and go out and do some stuff and feel confident and good. I mean, I know for myself, one of the things I was sharing before the podcast with Lockie is, after my illness and my time away from riding, it's changed things about my, this ties into that piece around like too much adrenaline, too much dopamine. Are you shaky around your horses? Like, I am now shaky when it comes to riding my horses, which is like real hard to admit, because Diva and I have been just like a solid partnership for 20, not the whole 20 years, admittedly, but a good chunk of our 20 years together. I have felt like so at home on her back. And that has shifted with me finding my body a little bit more,
period.
Right? Finding my body,
Found your body.
Yeah.
This ties into our last discussion about burnout, that this like abstract, invisible, culturally conditioned predator that's causing us to work ourselves in the ground and disassociate through work. If we are to fully detach ourselves from late stage capitalism, if we are to actually devolve or edit back to a more pure form of human, you will come to a horse and say, anyone will, I will, you will, someone listening will naturally follow this route where you will come to the horse and say, first, I don't want to use you unless you consent and are happy to be used and use me for your own enjoyment too. Meaning you won't want to proceed with the horse unless you've got that relationship in place. Natural horsemanship kicked it off 20, 30 years ago. We're all now taking the next steps past that and moving on with that, which is great. So that's what's going to happen. If you're getting to the root of detaching ourselves from colonialism and late stage capitalism, and we're getting rid of hustle culture, and we're coming back to empathy, and we're moving away from brutalism, if these are the things that as a society and as a people, as a Western culture, we are moving towards, every single one of those people who are horse people will become relationship focused. Every single one of them. So that's the first step. And then the second step is they will say, I also can't proceed with you unless my body says so too. Meaning you will come to the horse and your body will tap you on the shoulder and say, very large wildebeest with rocks for feet. You want to get on and go potentially at speed, and you cannot control them through pain anymore. you might have an issue. Just be really, really aware. If that's what our bodies are telling us, at no level should we be shaming our bodies for having that message to us, because isn't that message the most logical, the most sane, the most normal response to be having? And I'll co-sign that with you, Alexa. When I am out of the habit of riding, which when you do things like buy farms, move across country, start a paddock paradise in rural Spain, when you do things like this, or go for 10 city clinic tours across the world, and when you do things like this, what happens is you get out of your own discipline and habits of riding. When I'm out of my discipline of habit of riding, when I come to ride, fear is on my shoulder. It's not in control. Fear is with me. And I say, oh, hello, little friend. Thank you, because you're going to hold my hand as I get back into my routine with my horse, because you're going to be whispering in my ear, oop, hold up, little to the left. Oop, no, little to the right. Oh, that's enough for today.
Yep.
Oh, no, green light. You can go more. No, this is great. This is great. This is great. And then you're building it safely. So I had this conversation with a client yesterday. She said, I'm out of a habit of riding. Really want to ride. She's part of my advanced mentorship group, which I released silently. We've got people in it. She's going to be with me all year intensively. I want to ride this year and I want to ride well, but I'm scared. I said, the way to riding is with your fear, not around it, not over it. The way through is through. We're going to take it with us, and it's going to be our best friend as we go these next steps. Now, if our fear is completely overwhelming us, then we need to listen to that. We need to hold up. We need to consolidate. We need to educate. We need to prepare, and make sure that our preparations never turn to a when-but situation. You know, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to strike a balance between holding our horses, literally and figuratively, and allowing the rubber to meet the road and proceeding forwards with a sense of discipline, application, resilience, and stick-with-itness. If someone can find a balance between those two elements, you're going to be unstoppable and you're going to be safer with your horses, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. That just like really, I can feel that in my heart and my solar plexus of like,
I'm allowed to be in this place. You must. It's emotional horsemanship for a reason. I've done a lot of deep digging around these issues, you know?
Completely.
Your fear is your best friend as you're coming back into it. Alexa, you almost died last year.
Twice. Yep.
Twice. So if you're going to get on your girl, no matter how good she is, your body's going to say to you, just like, don't run into this without me.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I kind of have like a little Lockie on my shoulder, even though I haven't trained with you. I have this little Lockie on my shoulder that's like, it's good. It's so good. And so when I went out for a ride the other day, it was so interesting. And maybe this feeds into our adrenaline conversation. So I watched Mission Impossible the night before. I watched Mission Impossible.
Tom Cruise is so problematic.
Oh my gosh. And my butt cheeks were clenched and I was just wired. Honestly, I could not sleep. I was doing all my tools, Lockie. I was doing all my tools and I was like flying away. And I was planning to go for a ride. I'd been planning to go for a ride in the morning with my girlfriend. And I was like, okay. And the train scene is playing in my head. I'm just buzzing. I'm doing all my tapping, whatever. And I get to the barn and I'm like, okay, like I can go out for a walk. Walking for me is very calming. So I saddle Diva up and I'm like, okay, we'll just see. And so we go out and she's really good and pretty calm. And then we walk down the golf course trail and there's lots of stuff, right? Like it's raining a little bit. So all the people on the golf course have their big umbrellas and there's just lots of things going on. So we get to the end of the trail. We always go to the end and we turn back and Diva is like, all of a sudden I have like a dragon under me. She's just right. She's jigging. She's like just like a foot taller. I don't know what's, she's just become that, she has lost her regulation because I know that I'm not super well regulated. I'm not super calm. And it was so cool because in the past I would have been like, I'm riding through this, I'm figuring this out. I would have applied pressure. I would have,
Yeah.
And that day I just went, yeah, no. I got
I'm
off.
off.
I got
Bye.
off and we
Peace.
walked back. And we just did I did some target training and we had some grass and we just chilled out. And at the time I had this battle in me, the one part of me that was like, you gave up, you should have ridden through that.
You let her get away with it.
You let her get away with it. She's gonna learn from that. Okay, so this is one part. And then I had my Lockie on my shoulder that was like, that built trust. That was like what you need. And I was like, I hope that Lockie would say that. I think that was the right thing to do.
That is what I would say. That is what I would say. So when someone says you're gonna teach them or condition them to, quote, get away with that, that is working under the presumption that the horse found riding uncomfortable and unpleasant in the first place. So that's the first red flag. If our horses enjoy, or at least are quite fine to be ridden, they're not physically uncomfortable. In fact, they might be thriving because of the riding. Good, slow, long trail riding can really save a sick horse's life. It really can. It really can. And a sick person too. But let's imagine, for example, that our horses are not laboring underneath us in an unpleasant fashion, but they, for whatever reason, get stuck in a nervous system response. They feel a feeling that goes over threshold. It's no longer emotion. The nervous system turned the emotional lights off, and now we've got 4 or 5 systems only, which is a nervous system or a trauma response, and the horse is stuck there. You getting off proves to the horse, teaches them that they will get away with it. But what is the it they're getting away with? The it here is that my human will de-escalate when I'm escalating, and they will counterbalance me. They will be a safe place in my storm. They will be an anchor that I can tie myself to. They can be reliable and be trusted to abandon their insane monkey agenda so that I can feel well and whole again. That is the it that they are getting away with. Now, what's so bad about that? They would only seek to recreate that excessively adrenalized trauma response if, in fact, it did relieve discomfort, physical or emotional or behavioral, for them that they were laboring under and that they anticipate they're going to labor under again. So if someone says to me, oh, no, I'm not going to teach my horse to get away with it in that manner, my answer is, I believe you that is your experience with your horse, because there's probably some problems there. Are you open to hearing some solutions? Usually the answer is no. And then I say, love you, mean it, bless you on your way. Good luck, stay safe, wear a helmet. Maybe a crash vest too, neck brace. Just have whatever you need. Good luck out there, soldier. Well done. You're a hero. You're a hero that you can ride and force a frightened animal to your will. What a hero. Okay, so last weekend, I was having a lesson on my farm with a friend of mine because I'm going on a learning journey. As soon as I came home, I went on a learning journey again. So I'm having a lesson on my farm and we hear clip-clopping coming up the road into the village, and about 30 horses appear on the road. And it was what is called a feria, or a festiva of horse. Every village in Spain once a year will have a feria de caballo, like a horse festival in the village, where basically everyone saddles up whatever nag they've got access to, rides them into the town so everyone can see them on their horse, and they go to the bar, they get completely sideways, blackout drunk, and then they ride them home again. And the horses stand usually on the road all day without food and water while they get blackout drunk, so that everyone can see that they have horses and they ride. And so these people come past the farm, and as they come past the farm, they actually pause on the corner of my farm for a bit, for who knows what. They all kind of gathered on the road and milled around the corner of my farm. And as these horses then trotted into the village, my friend of mine, who's a very, very talented and experienced dressage instructor, and I both nodded our heads and said, there is not a single horse, not one in that group, who is not in a complete panic response. Every single one of them head in the air, if not completely inverted. Every single one of them going click, 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 click. Everyone's got bits and everyone's sitting like shit in there. It was just a massacre. It was so egregious, just the worst riding and horsemanship you can imagine. Just terrible. All my horses ran back from the road and gathered around the house and around me and my friend. They all gathered around us. And my horse, Caleb, who used to live that life, I swear to God, he looked at me and said, I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that is. And they parade themselves around in this manner of, look at me, I'm able to tame the beast. And the more out of control and on the edge the horse appears, and the more nonchalant the human looks on top of this horse who's having a meltdown, apparently the better their skill is. And this isn't even exceptional. This is a storyline that is played out all across Spain every year in hundreds of thousands of villages and towns across the country. This is garden variety, stock standard. This is where we're at, guys. We are only as fast as our slowest person. This is where we're at, which is why I tip my hat to the equine advocates like Shelby Dennis, for example, who basically bends over backwards, screaming into the wind, trying to advocate for something better. And we need voices like that, because when I see this egregious parade go past my farm, I'm like, yep, Shelby, you need more wood on that fire. Let me want some gasoline, like go for it. I don't have the energy anymore, but if you've got the adrenaline for it, let's go for it, because it needs to happen. And so that's just like one little microcosm of this broader human issue and humane issue, where everything horses do in a human world is filtered through the human's needs. It's selfishness, just plain narcissism.
Yeah.
And it's the way the human brain is formed, because if you look at the way the human brain formed, especially the abstract part of the brain, it was like this mushroom effect in the human brain where abstractivism grew on top of abstractivism and consciousness of consciousness of consciousness. It was this exponential growth of the prefrontal cortex, which started with a little kernel of something in one direction towards thinking and decision making, and then it just went kaboom in 4 million years, which was lightning fast. And now we've got this brain that can go multiple layers of like, it's like mirrors looking at each other, just this constant reflection of the self. Just this, the brain just goes boom, 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 boom. And what it does is far, far removes the human experience from ancient neural subcortical pathways, which are connected to emotional systems, trauma responses, body awareness, self-awareness. Human culture has us believe that self-awareness and self-consciousness, awareness of your consciousness and consciousness of your consciousness and consciousness of that consciousness, this horrible, never-ending inception, like that movie Inception of just like, people think that is the penultimate form of evolution, and that's what makes us superior from other animals. But if you look at Jaak Panksepp's work, and I was reading about this last night at like 1 a.m, he actually postulates theoretically and then infers it empirically that self-awareness didn't come last, it came first, and everything else that the brain developed came from self-awareness first, that the brain was aware of self first, and then everything came later, and that actually thoughts were the last thing to come, even after language. Descartes, 400 years ago, said, I think, therefore I am. What we know now is I feel, therefore I am. So when you feel fear around your horse, I say, you are.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That's your bottom, but you needed to reach your bottom
Mm-hmm.
to
Well,
find
yeah,
it.
I've realized, you know, I've been doing some real deep work around masking as well, and then recognizing how much I have masked on that level to be the kind of rider I wanted to be, right?
Mm,
And I feel like Diva never, she never fell for it. You know what I'm saying? I
yeah.
mean, I think I fell for it, but I don't think she ever fell for it. And
She humored you every now and
she
then,
did,
perhaps.
right?
Yeah.
And Raven absolutely does not fall for it. And she tells me that. She's like, yeah, so that's not gonna be a thing for us. And I'm grateful because
Mm,
that I want to feel what's real for me. And I want to feel a real kind of home, maybe
mm,
sometime along the line. But I have that on the ground. Like I was having this session with Raven yesterday, and it's like those moments where something breaks through, breaks open. And I've been doing some like a bunch of body work and nerve release and cranial work with her. She used to hate it when I did any sort of cavesson position on her. Any
mm,
kind of like nose contact was like, no,
mm,
from a pain perspective, right? And it was so cool. She just had on like I had a rope halter on because I was being lazy, and I just took like the softest kind of grasp of her nose band. And I was like, I just want to see like if you
Can
would
I?
come, if we could do this. And I walked backwards, and it was beautiful. Like she was just so soft and beautiful, and getting like her haunches in, and performing all these like in collection, these beautiful movements. And then I asked her for a trot in that position, and she's never done that before. I think because she's been maybe scared that her balance wouldn't be adequate to not harm me in barging
Mm,
forward, like that she couldn't sort of
mm,
keep over herself. But we've been
mm.
working a lot with that, and she was able to do it. She held it for, we're doing big circles, and I mean, it was more me like trying not to just fall on my ass, but she held it for about a half a circle in this beautiful way, and then with the out breath came back to a halt, and even was able to kind of come back over herself. I was like, damn, those kind of
Mm.
moments for me is like I felt so
At
proud and
home.
so at home and so
Mm.
excited. And it's small, like you said, it's like it's not fancy, anybody looking in would like, what's she doing over
But
there?
it
But
is.
for me,
But it
that
is.
was like, yeah, amazing to feel that softness from her, and that sense that she was finding her way over herself, because that's just not been the case for her in her body. And to know that her strength is building was just like, oh, such a good feeling. So I feel
Mm,
that in that space, and no fear in me, like
mm.
that, I'm sure there's little bits, but not of
Well,
her,
fear was
right?
there. The fear was there because when you went to ask her,
Yeah.
you said, Can
Wasn't
I?
sure. Yeah. Can I? Yeah.
May I? Can we?
Yeah.
Together. And when you asked for the trot, it was a true question. It wasn't an aid, it
Yeah.
wasn't a command. It was a true question because you questioned if it was possible because your fear said, well, she might barge forwards and
Yeah.
that can be hazardous for you. You are not who you once were. You can't just like bounce back anymore. So if
Yeah.
she had a moment needed to run you over, that could be catastrophic for
Yeah.
me. So, Raven, my darling, can we
Yeah.
try? And she went, when you're like this, yes, every
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. Like the group coaching program I finished last year, I called it homecoming for that reason, because everyone's on a learning journey, but no one's interested in going home. And I think what sets a advanced horse person apart from someone who's yet to find their way is that an advanced horse person knows what's home to them. And from that home, they can go on a holiday to learn something, but they'll always bring it back to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really at home in emotional horsemanship, but a lot of people are out there looking for their home. And I ran homecoming as a way to say, look, if you would like emotional horsemanship to be home for you, this is your chance to get a taste of that.
Yeah.
And what's happening for some of the people and their horses, even after the fact, and now it's turned into 2 coaching programs for this year. It's not so much what the horses are doing, although all of their horses are doing differently with them. It's predominantly how they feel when they do what they do with their people is different. There is a quality shift in their movement. There is a expression improvement in their behavior. There is even an intangible sense of warmth. We called it a warm glow. Yes. It's oxytocin. Yes. It's a warm glow, whether you're doing something or not. And if you can create that feeling tone of a warm glow first, and then you spin it, you spin between you and the horse, this warm glow, like making fairy floss. You spin it, and you're not doing anything yet, but you're creating this warm glow that the horse just starts to warm up, and they just start to feel lighter on their feet. And then you ask, and it's there with the feeling intact. The alternative is you walk into an empty room and you say, do that for me. And the horse will go with the tail, and they might do it or they might not. Or they'll flip you the bird as they do it. Now, some horses have spent so long in a cold room in their training that flipping the bird and swishing a tail when they go to do stuff or grinding their teeth about it, that is now a conditioned response. And I spend a lot of my time, and obviously people like yourself and other trainers you speak to spend a lot of our time now as professionals deconditioning that response and having the horses come back to the present feeling with them. The logical answer to this is, if we want to ride with feel, we have to allow ourselves, in fact, to feel things. Yes. You can't say you must be emotionally neutral when you ride. Okay, now we're going to do a clinic about feel. I go, oh, what? Like, really? Wow. And then you hear that feel for these folk is often a complete abstract concept about rein manipulations. And I'm like, it's almost alexithymic. Like alexithymia. I believe that's the correct term. Don't write me if I've flubbed that. Alexithymia, it is when it is a trauma response, or it is a predisposition of neurodivergence as well. It's a symptom within neurodivergence, but it can also be a trauma response. Alexithymia, when you see emotion as a mechanical problem that requires a mechanical solution, rather than a feeling problem that requires a feeling solution. It's called alexithymia. Bessel van der Kolk writes about it in The Body Holds the Score, even though he's developed past that book now. He writes about it, and it's a very well-studied phenomena that we'll see people have an emotional problem with their horse and they'll seek a mechanical solution. It's alexithymia. It's a trauma response or a neurodivergent response. It's fascinating.
It is. It's super, super interesting. I know we're coming to the end here. I had this beautiful moment with Raven this morning when I was sitting doing something on the little pallet, and she loves her hay ball. She loves her little hay ball, pushing it around. And we've just like this relation, like you sharing about the glow. I'm like, oh, so we're sitting there and she's fussing with her hay ball, and she just keeps coming over and bopping my hand and bopping my hand and bopping my hand. And it's like, she's like, hi. Oh, hi. And I had this, like, the feeling was just like,
that's it.
Like,
that's it.
Just like little tears in my eyes, and just this feel, like my heart just went, oh my gosh, like she is here with me. And she's been the hardest horse to find her home, because I think her body was in so much discomfort for so long that she just couldn't find it. She just couldn't find it. And just to see this moment of her going, hi, it's like, oh, just the best shit ever. I gotta say.
And I guarantee you, if you are so lucky and blessed to see out her life cycle, and that you're lucky enough and blessed enough to be there at the end, your last feeling and memory with her will not be the trail ride where you conquered your fears. It will be that moment with the hay ball and the boop. That's what we all
will remember that childlike moment where you looked at your horse and they looked at you and they saw you and then you felt something. That's what all of us are chasing. And that's what all of us at the end of the day will value highly above everything else. So if that is that important, even for the most jaded, the most heavy handed, the most out of touch trainer, still says they love their horses, and many of them still share those moments with those horses they are heavy on. If even that person values that above all else, what are we doing forming training around anything else except that is our nucleus?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you can do that in dressage or not, but like, or in trail riding or not, or in jumping or not, or working equitation, shouldn't the nucleus be this warm glow? It is for me. It is for me. I can't have anything else without it. I'll share one story as we finish because it'll kind of put a bow on our conversation. I now have help. I needed help 3 years ago, but I've got help now on the farm with the horses. I've been an octopus for too long. I'm now got help, and we're very slowly getting them into my business so that I can afford to have them there long term, etc. And they're really, really qualified, and I love them, and it's working really well. But before that, I was dealing with 2 hurricanes, a completely flooded farm, no mud grids, no nothing, a full work schedule. I just overextended at the end of a long year. And I'd had a really busy day, and I was making the horses feed, and I'd called them in from the pasture, and I hadn't had enough time to do enough fencing so that the fencing was really visible in low light, because I chose like a discrete fencing that blends, but in low light, the horses can't see it very well. So it's a judgment call. So I knew I had to call them in because the light was failing, and I was 15 minutes late because I'd been 15 minutes late all day. I was 15 minutes late calling them in off the pasture, and I'm in there trying to mix the food while they're coming in because they've got to get in off now. Next thing I hear a bang, bang, snap, 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 and thundering hooves. Sonny hadn't seen the fence and he ran through it. He panicked. He got a zap and he ran through it. My fence is in ruins, and he had bent metal T-posts over because he's a brick shit house. And I went over there and I said a few blue words, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to fix the fence before we go forward. And I went to go fix the fence, and I went to go fix the fence, and I saw what a mess it was, and exhaustion overtook me. And I just flopped on the ground, and I almost started to cry. And my ex-dressage horse, Sereno, I didn't know it. He's 700 kilos, and he walked so softly up behind me. And next thing I feel is teeth on my shoulder and then a lift on my jacket. It's almost like he was saying, pull yourself together. Get up. You Rama. It's like, you've not seen, I've seen worse. Come on, get up. He picked me up. But it wasn't like that. I'm anthropomorphizing, but it was so tender.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect it from him because I hadn't really had a warm glow with him yet. I'd been showing him my procedures that can facilitate it, but he had remained on his ivory tower because that's who he is and that's where he's come from. He's used to that distance. And I knew that I was planting seeds, and I knew that under the radar, he was starting to allow me to come in. But when I didn't expect him to, and when I needed it the most, that horse found me, picked me up, and gave me everything I needed to pull myself together and say, it's no big deal. I'm going to be all right.
Yep.
Fix it tomorrow morning. Feed the horses, go to bed.
Yep.
It's fine.
Yeah.
And this horse said to me, it's all right. And until you've had a horse meet your needs like that, until you've actually experienced that, until one has, I wouldn't have believed that story if I hadn't experienced it myself.
Yeah.
Many of us have those stories, and we're blessed if we've got them. And anyone out there who's listening who hasn't had that story yet, if you stick around long enough, it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're ever worried about abandoning a human practice in favor of a more equine focused one, be it horsekeeping or training, just consider that potential for a horse to find you in your lowest moment and pick you up and lift you. Consider the fact that the horses in our care have that capacity, and treat them accordingly in all that we do, if you can. And if you lose your patience, we all do it. Forgive yourself immediately, because they will.
Yep.
And keep it pushing.
I love it. What a perfect way to complete a very amazing conversation, as always. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. As always.
Yay.
My pleasure to speak with you. Always.
Lovely. Well, we'll be doing it more. Don't you worry.
I love it. I'm going to start a podcast this year as well.
I saw
it's going to be like an old-timey radio show with like segments and stuff. It's going to be fun.
Fantastic.
So you might have to be the first guest.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay,
of course.
cool.
Of course. You heard it all here, everybody. Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Lockie, for being here and being a night owl. That is wonderful. And thanks to all of our horses for just being amazing and so patient. So grateful for them. Don't know what I would do without them, frankly. And I've listed all of your info on my website, but just maybe for anyone who doesn't know you, Lockie, what is your website?
Emotionalhorsemanship.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube under the same title.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll look forward to chatting with you very, very soon. Bye for now. Thanks so much for listening in today. If you're interested in learning more about equine cranial therapy from Elise and I, we now have an introductory webinar available, and you can sign up for that at bit.ly /CST webinar. So that's bit.ly /CST webinar to get that really cool replay and be signed up for our live Q&A. In that, you get 2 amazing techniques as well to start your journey in cranial therapy. And if you are interested in learning more about our certification, you can head to equilibriatherapeutics.com /equine-craniosacral. So we hope to see you there. You can apply today. Our intake begins January the 1st, but you can apply anytime, and this intake closes January 31st. Okay, have a great day.